Do I need the microphone? Can I do without it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good to put the sound for the video.
Ah, okay then. No slides. My apologies. Can I call up the site though, somehow? We can do that?
Do it for you?
Yes, because you'd think I would know at this point. Let me start with this. What I'm going to talk about very, very quickly is how this thing got started. But in this context, you may be aware that several years ago, the Kaufman Foundation in Kansas City did a study about startups. And they reported that 45% of startups that were still in business 5 years after launching, which is to say successful, was started by people who had a particular problem in their own lives that they wanted to fix. That was me. So it goes like this. 2.5 years ago, thereabouts, having, under the assumption that at the age of 58, having written 6 books and written for all the magazines that I wanted to write for, I would simply go on being a mid-list author, which is to say, doing okay, making a living from teaching at Columbia, where I teach, and from writing my books, only to discover that I was being squeezed out of the market. Nobody was telling me that I couldn't write anymore in terms of my ability, such as it was, but rather what was happening was there was simply no place in an ever-shrinking traditional print market for somebody like me. I learned this painfully from my agent of 28 years, who upon reading a revised book proposal that I had written for a topic that I barely even remember now, said, I cannot sell this book. He didn't say, I'm going to try to sell this book. He said, I cannot sell this book. And it's worse. He said, unless you come up, and the wording is really careful, and believe me, it stuck with me. Unless you come up with a surefire idea for a book that will sell, you are toast. That hurt my self-esteem. And I began to realize that it wasn't just me, that I had a lot of writer friends who were very much the same position that I was in, who were, I hope I'm not giving offense now, who would have been thrilled that anybody, a vanity press, anybody would have published it what they wanted because what they were doing, simply because there was no market for them anymore. And so this. 2.5 years later, there is this. And I don't think you can see it here only because the resolution isn't very good, but in the lower corner, right over here, where my hand points, can you see? No. There's a cartoon. Can I make that, can I somehow make that apparent? There's a cartoon of a famous image from The New Yorker by Al Hirschfeld of the Algonquin Roundtable. Can you see it there in the corner? There it is. Perfect. That is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. I wanted to be not just me, but everybody I knew and everybody around them to sit around the table. Because what do all those people have in common? They are writers and they are happy, or maybe bitchy and crabby and nasty, in each other's company. In short, what I wanted to do is create in the digital space a place where writers could be made to feel good about what they did. I knew something about being a writer. I knew that writers wanted to be read, they wanted to be paid, and they wanted to have somebody they could complain to. Not much. I knew these things from 35 years of painful but nonetheless delightful experience. So the question was, what was wrong then, and what was wrong with the comment that my agent made? What he said was, unless you come up with a surefire idea, you're toast. Well, how do you know? How many of you have ever had an experience with a publishing company who said, we did a P&L on your idea, profit and loss on your idea? It is the stupidest thing in the world. How could you possibly do a profit and loss on a product that does not exist yet? It only exists here or in a proposal. And nonetheless, what you were being told, because there was tremendous pressure from on high at the 5 major publishing houses and in the magazine business, the traditional print magazine business, to come up with ideas that were for sure going to sell, which meant that somebody's gut, somebody who was smart but whose gut was no better than anybody else's, was going to make a decision about what people wanted to read. And that's really dumb. It was dumb because what it did is it precluded evermore the possibility of the one quality that will make people pause. Swiping, clicking, turning away, and that is surprise. So for me, the question was, if you could increase the chances of surprise, you could make more writers happy. And if you made more writers happy, they would make readers happy. And in turn, there would be a virtuous cycle, and the readers would make the writers happy too by reading them and maybe even giving them some money. A very, very simple construct. So then the question was, well, how do you increase the chances of surprise? Kind of simple. You have more people weighing in on whether they want to read something. So in the very beginning, I said, here's a 10,000 word piece. Let me get 10 people to look at it. How many of you voluntarily, as homework, want to read 10,000 words? That's what I thought. Nobody does. Because it feels like, and how many of you like doing homework? Nobody likes doing homework. So first pivot. That didn't work at all. So then we said, well, let's have people read the first 1,000 words of a 10,000 word or 7,000 or 12,000 word story. That was different. It takes 5 minutes to read 1,000 words. It really does. It takes 5 minutes. Time it. And at the end of which you could say to somebody, would you want to read more or no thanks? That's all you have to do. Read more or no thanks. And if you want to say any comments back to the writer, like, I like this, but it's slowed down here, you're welcome to do it. We'll pass the comments along anonymously. Here was the compact we made. And this is based upon no science whatsoever. It was just, let's just try it. If we sent the story, I gathered 40 people who I knew or former students, friends, who I could ask to help with this. And we sent 1,000-word previews of long stories to 5 of them, 5 at a time. And we said, if 1 in 5 likes the story, that would suggest there's an audience for it. Please don't say, how do you got to 1 in 5? Because I don't know. I just did. Maybe it's the wrong number. Maybe we wanted 2 in 5. I have no idea what we should have wanted. But if nobody liked it, that told us something. We discovered that, first of all, 5 out of 5, forget it. The best you're going to get is 3 out of 5. So then we decided, let's see what happens if we do it this way. The idea of the 1,000 words, by the way, being that if you can get the first 1,000 words of a story down, the odds of you getting the rest are pretty good. I mean, there may be flaws, but you can't get the first 1,000 words down unless you kind of know what you're doing. So we started this thing. And 8 stories later, I'll tell you what we found. In the very beginning, we published 4 stories. And this was our plateau. 1,100 unique page views. Then we went up to 3,500 unique page views. Then we went up to 15,000 unique page views. All the while, this was the really coolest metric. We started at about 6 minutes, an average of 6 minutes on a page. Then 7, then 8, and finally in August we had a story that had, to this point, about 27,000 unique page views.
2 minutes left.
Watch this. 27,000 unique page views, 9 minutes on the page, and we decided to add an element to it. You didn't have to pay, but you could donate to the author if you wanted. So that author has so far made about $800. Success. And then we published an even better story, we thought, in August, rather than September. 1,100 page views, $50 to the author, still 9 minutes on the page. What did we do wrong? So here we find ourselves 5 months after we started with a whole bunch of interesting observations and a big question, which is, now that we started, where do we go? We have an enterprise that is a company that is not yet a business. And I think going forward, and I think for a lot of startups, and I can obviously speak for myself, where do you go after you start? We have some ideas, and I'm happy to talk about some of them with you if you'd like to know. But the interesting question is, what you discover along the way is that things go wrong. And that's okay, because that's when the interesting stuff happens. So, please, questions. Did I get under 2 minutes? I did that, right? Please, questions.
Thank you. Questions? Anyone?
Yes.
So, do the authors have the full thing written, or are they first pitching an idea
No, they're not pitching an idea. They're saying you already, it's a little bit like you're asking journalists to think like novelists or short story writers. Write it, the story that you were burning to write. This is the conceit of the thing. Send it along to us. Send us the whole story. We'll take out a preview and we'll send it along. And then what will happen is this. If 1 in 5 of the readers like it, we'll work with you. My colleague Mike Hoyt, who's a fantastic editor, he and I will do a diagnosis of the story and say, look, to make the story work, you need to do this, this, and this. And these are the anonymous comments from readers. And if you want to do a revision, we're here for you. And so far, about 5 writers have actually sent back, working on or have actually sent back revisions, which we took as a really good sign, like, well, thank you for that. Thank you for taking time and helping me work on my story. Yes?
So what is actually the business model? Is that, you mentioned that $800?
The business model. That's the question you never ask an entrepreneur. I am a business in search of a business model. Let me tell you what the business model is not. The business model is not our getting 10% of every sale of these stories, because that's not good. It's a nickel and dime business. I think that our business, frankly, going forward is to become a nonprofit, because that way we can raise money not from venture capitalists, because frankly, we're not that appealing to a venture capitalist, unless they were dumb venture capitalists. No, I don't want to say that because there's many VCs in the room. I just totally screwed myself there. No, the business is really one in which I suspect our greater source of funding will be through donations, foundations, what have you. Because what we really want to be able to do is branch out what we offer. Writer conferences, editing services, a whole host of things that we're actually playing with right now. This was just designed to see, could we launch a minimally viable product? But the MVP cannot be our business, just because what we want to see is, would people read, would people submit? They have about 40 people have submitted. Would the vetting system work? It has worked. Would they share, and would they donate? The conversion rate, incidentally, for those of you who want to know but want to get rich by selling your stories individually, it's tough. The industry standard for conversion rate, I think, is 1.5%. We're at 0.5. If we can get to 1%, I'd be delighted. But that's not really the business that we can really be in. Did you have a hand up? Yes, please.
How long it took you to from concept to the first big?
2 years. 2 years. And you're thinking, boy, is he dumb? Right. You know what? You know what it was? I can only speak to this from perspective as a journalist, which is, it was very, or somebody writing books. I knew how to gather stuff, but until I could come up with the frame, the 5-word frame for what the business was, it took a long time and it took a lot of iteration. We are in the business of making writers happy. We're in the writer business. We are not in the reader business. I love readers. I love you all. But I really love writers, because I don't know readers, but I know writers. And I was an unhappy writer. I mean, it's ambient state, but I wanted to be able to lessen the degree of frustration that writers dealt with. Yes, in the back, and then over here. I'm sorry, but I called him first. Yeah.
It sounds like you're trying to de-risk something, so it sounds like you're trying to de-risk something with 1,000 words, and we'll see if people want to continue on, and we'll track that metric, and that makes sense to some degree. Have you guys thought about de-risking, like, the act of writing the whole article? Like, what if you got 10 journalists to say, instead of going and doing all the work and writing 12,000 words, I'll write an 800-word abstract. We'll see how many people want to read the rest, and I'll spend the next 3 months writing it.
I'm totally open to that.
It's like pre-bought.
In fact, I'm totally open to that. I'm open to anything. One of the ideas that I've actually had people float to me is, hey, can I try out a book idea? I'm working on a book idea. It's an obscure subject, which means that unless it's the Kardashian biography, good luck trying to sell it. And I've said to friends, listen, if you have a book idea you want to try out, precisely to your point, give us a sample chapter. And then you can say to your agent, who can say to editors, guess what? 20,000 people love this book. They spent 9 minutes on the page. I got $1,000 for doing this. There's your P&L. So I'm happy to do that. You know, it's kind of, one of the things that's interesting to your question before about how long did it take, it took a while because at the end of the day, you need to have a value, not a value proposition. What you hold sacred. What we hold sacred is, if it doesn't make writers happy, we don't do it. So when you suggest that, which I frankly hadn't thought about, I thought about it in books, I hadn't thought about it in stories, I go, that would make writers happy, I could work with that. And it becomes, you need a frame for how you're going to make decisions going forward. So that's a cool idea. Yes.
Actually,
How many names do you have on your mailing list?
850. This is Anna Hyde, our publisher. 850.
great.
851? Anyone?
Michael, maybe while we're so let's shift gears to Charpy. Do you have a quick one, Phil?
Do the writers get to see the metrics?
Oh, we let them know. We absolutely let the writers know. All about transparency. We say, listen, you know, good news, bad news. Your parents loved it. But so far, I mean, we share it a lot because I think it's important to be transparent about it. We tell them, but we don't lie. Much. No, we don't at all. Anyway, thank you all.
Thanks, Michael.